Your crazy hormone symptoms might be related to what's going on in your mouth all the way down to your intestines. You're going to want to listen up because I'm going to explain how those two are connected and then my top 8 tips for helping both your hormone and your gastrointestinal tract come together. Hi, my name is Dr. Carrie Jones. I understand hormones can feel like herding cats, so you're going to want to hit that subscribe button so you can learn as much as you can about you. Now, let's talk about your GI tract and how that could possibly be related to your hormones. Well, just as the song says, the knee bone really is connected to the hip bone, and it goes to show that when you have issues going on in your mouth, in your stomach, in your intestines, it can impact your hormones. But your changing hormones in perimenopause through menopause can also cause disruption in your GI tract. Now, first of all, what is the GI tract? Think of it like a tube, like a straw end to end. So the one end is your mouth and the other end of the straw is, well, you know where that is. And just like a straw, it is one layer thick. That's it. Everything, the tube all the way down is one layer thick. And it has trillions of microbes in there, known as your microbiome. So you have your mouth microbiome, you have your stomach microbiome, your small intestine, and your large intestine microbiome. When there's a lot of disturbance in the force, a lot of imbalance, infection, things are going on, hormone stuff, then it's going to create problems all the way through the digestive tract. We think of this like a fence. Think of a fence around a yard with a gate. That's the same idea with the straw. We want the fence to have healthy, quality, strong boards. We don't want any holes in the fence. We want the gate attached well. We want the gate to be able to lock, but the gate to be able to open when you need to get out. You may be trying to keep your kids and your dogs inside the fence. You don't want just random people keep coming in and out of your fence. You don't want holes in your fence, allowing wild animals or anything else in through your fence. It's the same in your GI tract. If you have holes in your fence, if your gate isn't really working, this is where we call it leaky gut. You've probably heard about this before. It sounds crazy, but it's true. Think of like holes in a fence or a gate that's coming off of its hinges or always open and doesn't quite close. That makes for openings for things to go in and out that shouldn't go in and out. It's leaky, and the same can happen in your GI tract. Now, how do estrogen and progesterone play a role? Estrogen and progesterone play a role because they work to fortify or strengthen the fence, but especially the gates. It seems that estradiol, which is your main estrogen, and progesterone play a big role in making sure the gates essentially open when they need to open. They're not leaky. They're not just sort of barely hanging off their hinge, that everything is good on the gate side. It helps to reduce inflammation. It helps to keep your fence board strong. It helps with all the microbes that are down there. Now, what can happen is you're moving through perimenopause all the way through to the postmenopausal transition. Research is showing us that our microbes get less diverse. We're more prone to inflammation. We have more issues with this leaky gut. So you may notice a lot of mouth symptoms in perimenopause, stomach issues, lower intestinal issues as you're making this transition. But anything that's happening from your mouth all the way down will translate to your entire system. Now, stay with me. Research has shown that when you have leaky gut, when estradiol goes down and increases your risk for leaky gut, then it can increase the risk for low-grade chronic inflammation. You may not notice it in your GI tract, but you may notice it in your muscles. You may notice it in your joints. You may notice it in your brain. You may notice it in your skin. You may notice it in your lack of energy. So you get this low-grade chronic inflammation because the gates are allowing anything through that we have to get an immune response now. If anything's allowed to go through the gate, the immune system is right there in your bloodstream, ready to attack. Now, this getting through the gate is called translocation. Something that should stay in the straw, should stay in your intestines, has now like, whoop, moved through the gate out the other side. And when the immune system has to get involved, we have a little fight, a little fire, a little inflammation. 1 or 2 times, no big deal. Multiple times, and we have a big deal. So when we go through perimenopause and don't have great levels of estradiol progesterone, or you've moved all the way into postmenopause, and your estradiol and progesterone are quite low, unless, of course, you're on some kind of therapy, then this can occur in the GI tract. What's really cool is we're going to start seeing more research around this and the inflammation that comes from the changes in the GI tract out into the system, what's happening with estrogen and progesterone. So we're just starting to see this research come out. And while I don't love what it's saying, I don't want my GI tract to also have to go through this transition. I love the education and the information we're getting, so we know what to do with it. Now, here's the other thing that I want to touch on, because as I said, if you have this low-grade chronic inflammation, research says you're at increased risk for high glucose, so prediabetes, diabetes. You're at increased risk for higher cholesterol, all related to the GI tract, not just because the hormones are low to begin with. You're at increased risk for that visceral fat gain, the fat gain that's inflammatory and all around the organs. It's the fat gain that we definitely don't want. If you also have stuff going on in your microbiome, it can be the opposite effect. It will negatively impact your hormones. So when you make a hormone like estradiol, it has to go through metabolism or detoxification. When it goes through this, the final stage is to get rid of it. So we either get rid of it through the kidneys or we get rid of it, of course, out through the intestines into the stool. But if the microbiome part that's responsible for estrogen is not doing well, this area is called the estrobolome. It's the estrogen microbiome. We squish it together, it's called the estrobolome. If the estrobolome is unhealthy, then it can cause your estrogens to get pulled back into the body and go out into circulation. This is getting linked also to obesity. It's getting linked to fibrocystic breasts. It's getting linked to PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome. It's getting linked to PMS. Gut issues can cause hormone issues as well, because if estrogen can't go out and instead the estrogen microbiome is pulling it back in, then you're going to have all this extra circulating estrogen that your body wasn't planning on or you weren't planning on. Now, what do? Well, here's where we're still kind of waiting for a lot of the research, but we know a lot about the GI tract, and I saw patients for years. I have tons of feedback, trials and errors, protocols we've used to improve somebody's gut health. So first and foremost, I said it starts with the mouth. Oral care is huge. You have so many bacteria up in your mouth. If you haven't been to a dentist in a while, it's time to go to a dentist. If you don't brush or floss regularly, it's time to start. If you have unhealthy gums or tongue or anything lips, and you just keep swallowing that bad bacteria down into the rest of your digestive tract, of course, that's not helping. So make sure we start at the top of the straw, the oral health, and get that evaluated and be consistent there. Then what you put in your mouth, you want to chew. You are not a snake. Now remember, when you eat food, it goes down to your stomach, and all your digestive enzymes, your stomach acid helps to break it apart further so that it can then move to the small intestine, and whatever it needs to get absorbed gets absorbed. But if you're just swallowing food whole, large chunks, it's hard to break that down. And if you already have broken fence boards and gates that aren't working that well, those food chunks, those food particles can translocate across into the bloodstream when they shouldn't, and that'll set off the immune system. So you may notice when you eat, gosh, every time I eat, I get gas, I get bloating, I'm uncomfortable, I don't feel good, I get these crazy symptoms. Start with chewing your food. Chew your food into tiny particles that will then help your stomach do its job so that the tiny particles can move in the small intestine and not cause a big reaction, especially if you have gate issues or fence issues on your tube. You see what I'm saying? That leads me to number 3. You may also need additional help in breaking this food down. So you may need digestive enzymes such as New Ethics Utilize. You may need a little bit of apple cider vinegar when you eat. You may need a little bit of lemon juice when you eat. You may need like a little shot of it to help stimulate the digestive enzymes, the digestive juices, the stomach acid. Now be very careful if you have ulcers, don't do this. Don't do this for that. But if you have just been feeling like it's slow, it's sluggish, you're kind of blah, you're kind of bloated, then getting your digestive juices flowing may be really helpful for you to try for a couple weeks, or talk, of course, always with your practitioner about. Now that leads me to number 4, the types of food. Research is showing us that food diversity is key. Diversity. Now, we don't entirely know what diversity looks like. That research, I think, is still coming. But I do know you probably eat the same food or the same types of food every day. And when you go out to eat, you eat the same meal. And when you do the same protein powder or the same protein bar or the same breakfast, everything is same, same, same. And while what you eat on Monday is different than Tuesday, there's probably a lot of crossover, meaning your Monday dinner may be different than your Tuesday dinner, but breakfast and lunch were probably pretty similar, if not the same. Or Monday and Tuesday vegetables were the same, maybe the meat was just different. So food diversity in research is shown to have very positive effects on the microbiome. And as women go through perimenopause and lose those hormones, they lose microbial diversity. The good guys, the good ones that we need many of, start to go down. We start to trend towards losing, let's say, families of microbes that we don't want to. We want lush, diverse, healthy microbes down there. We want the trillions to be very, very colorful, very diverse. That's what helps us as a human. So here's my suggestion to think about. Start to diversify. Start looking at the grocery store at the different vegetables. What's a vegetable you haven't had in a while? Do you need to eat more vegetables? Do you need to eat different fruits or more fruits? If you always eat chicken, do you need to try turkey? If you always eat beef, do you need to try turkey? Do you need to try bison? Do we need to rotate up? When you go out to eat, is it possible you can try something else here and there? So food diversity is something we are evaluating. I'm looking hard in the research. We don't quite have definitive answers, but I know what diversity is, and I know a lot of people eat the same thing often. The other thing that you can try with diversity is to vary how you eat, meaning maybe you eat lower carb 3 days in a row. And then maybe you eat maybe more keto, maybe higher fat 3 days in a row. Maybe you eat more protein 3 days in a row. Again, just getting some variation once a week, twice a week could impact your GI tract in a positive way. These are the things we're going to start really starting to see in the research, and I want you to know this information now. Number 5, probiotics. Probiotics help modulate the microbiome and seem to also support lowering inflammation. Now, probiotics don't seem to stay. They kind of casually sweep through and improve things as they move. So if you need that like casual sweep through improving because your gas, your bloating, your constipation, your diarrhea not doing that well, probiotics may be a really great option, or even probiotic heavy foods. Number 6, fiber. Fiber, resistant starch, and postbiotics. Now, fiber, postbiotics, and resistant starch support the large intestines. So a postbiotic is essentially what comes out the other end of a probiotic, and a resistant starch is a starch that doesn't get broken down in the stomach or small intestines. It moves all the way through so it can feed the cells of the large intestine. And there is a lot of new research coming out about this, that these types of foods or even supplements are supporting the cells of the large intestine, specifically an area called the short-chain fatty acids. You have several short-chain fatty acids. Remember, they're all helpful for the large intestine, but a big one that we're seeing in the news is called butyrate with a B, butyrate. And butyrate, again, very anti-inflammatory, very supportive to the large intestines. And you can get this by increasing your fiber, increasing the plants and vegetables that you eat. Even increasing foods, for example, jicama. Jicama is that's jicama with a J. Jicama is one of my absolute favorite resistant starches. Greener banana, for example. And as I said, there are a lot of fiber supplements out there now that include resistant starches in them to support the short chain fatty acids, feed up the cells, the microbiome part of your large intestine. So you're going to see a lot of research, if you haven't already, on short chain fatty acids. This is huge. And we lose this as women as we go through perimenopause and postmenopause. Our ability to create short chain fatty acids goes down, unfortunately. So you may be seeing already on social media a lot of people talking about fiber, talking about these resistant starches. It's for a good reason. Now that leaves me to number 7. Number 7 is a hard one as it's around alcohol. It turns out alcohol can negatively modulate the microbiome and also create some inflammation. So if you're experiencing a lot of hormonal symptoms, you're experiencing some GI symptoms, and alcohol is a regular part of your life, you may want to minimize or cut it out completely for a while and see how that goes. Now, lastly, number 8. Number 8 is around hormone replacement therapy. And in the research we're seeing in small studies, this is also starting to ramp up. But women who are on hormone replacement therapy, a combination of estrogen, progesterone, it seems to improve microbial diversity and support those gates and strengthen the fences, the fence line. So it's not the end all be all. You can't just go on hormone replacement therapy and do nothing else. Just like maybe you're listening to this going, I have done the other 7 things and nothing's really working. Now there are more. These are just my top 8. But it's also possible if you want it or you are a candidate, hormone replacement therapy could make a big difference in what's going on down in the GI tract. So I hope this was helpful for explaining how hormones and the GI tract play such a big role with each other and how the decline in hormones in perimenopause and menopause can cause craziness, dysbiosis, leaky gut down there, just like any kind of dysbiosis in the microbiome, specifically the area that focuses on estrogen, can cause problems with estrogen circulating around in your system. So you're going to want to hit like and subscribe because, as I said, hormones can feel like herding cats, and I'm here to help.